Chair and members of the Commission. We are certainly sorry about Commissioner Bedell feeling under the weather and wish him a very speedy recovery. So, as you mentioned, Mr. Chair, today is our maiden voyage, so to speak, with live streaming in the spirit of continued transparency in our effort to expand opportunities for the public to be part of these Commission meetings. Also, this is our first meeting utilizing a consent calendar to make our meetings as meaningful as possible, where the Director, with the Commission's guidance, can place items that are not anticipated to have discussion on the consent calendar. The items on the consent calendar will be taken up as one action item at the beginning of each meeting. In addition to action items, the consent calendar may also include informational materials or reports for the Commission's information. Any item may be taken off of the consent calendar at the request of any one Commissioner. These items taken off of the consent calendar will be presented and considered separately at the end of the open meeting. Of course, we'll evaluate how the Commission feels this is working after a meeting or two and adjust as the Commission sees necessary. Also, an update on the Department's strategic planning efforts. We are currently going through an effort to reevaluate our priorities as an agency in an effort to ensure we are looking toward the future and allocating finite resources toward the highest and most impactful efforts to accomplish our constitutional mission. Department staff are in the process of this effort. You, of course, as a Commission, will be part of this effort. Furthermore, we'll be engaging the public as we move forward, including in our 80th anniversary roundtables that Aaron Jeffries will share more about later in this meeting. And finally, the Department is in the midst of its budgeting process for the FY18 budget. We'll be presenting our expenditure plans to the Commission during the April budget workshop, and of course, we are currently working with the legislature now in regards to our FY18 executive budget. Mr. Chair, that is all, unless there's any questions from the Commission.
Any questions or comments, Commissioner Blair?
None.
Commissioner Bradley? Thank you. Let's move on to the next action, or the next item of business, and who will be our first presenter? Doug, thank you. Please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly, I am pleased to share with you that the Department's Water Fountain Managed Fund System team has been recognized for their work with the development of the new Water Fountain Managed Fund System that was recently piloted at the Ted Shank Conservation Area. The team received the 2016 Innovation Award from the Organization of Fish and Wildlife Information Managers, or OFOM, at their international conference this past fall. The Water Fountain Managed Fund System was a pilot project that debuted at the Ted Shank Conservation Area just this past fall. The pilot system employs a new application to power the kiosks for the hunter check-in, check-out, and morning draw administration processes. Having the new system in place allows the Department to leverage the data captured to easily create statistical reports that can be used in many different ways and can also be displayed there on a large screen in the lobby. Overall feedback from staff and many hunters indicate that it was a successful pilot. There are several members of the team from both wildlife and IT. As I call their names, I would ask department staff on the team to stand and be recognized. We have Ryan Kelly, Mike Flashpoller, Andrea Pearson, Mike Jones, Dale Ellis, Todd Holt, Lisa Lucas, Gabe Richter, Pat Rigby, Mark Roberts, and Rachel Van Vliet. If you would, please join me in congratulating the team.
Congratulations on the recognition, and thanks for all the hard and focused work to make this happen. Okay, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. This will be an action item. This is consideration of the items on the consent calendar. And there are three, C2, C8, and C10, that are items that we'll reconsider later in the agenda in their entirety. But for the purpose of the consent calendar, I'd entertain a motion to approve the following: the approval of minutes of our last open meeting, a recommendation for personnel reclassifications, personnel changes, the update on the Conservation Employees Benefits Plan Trust Fund, recommendations for approval to suspend or revoke hunting and fishing privileges for individuals for cause, or individuals who are not in compliance with child support laws, or individuals who are in accordance with terms of the Interstate Wildlife Compact. Also, the Information Technology Project Status Report and the monthly financial summary, since we're going to be looking at the quarterly summary later on in the agenda. So, a motion to approve the consent calendar in aggregate.
I'll make that motion, Chairman.
Do I have a second? All right, any consideration or discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we're ready for item 4. Nathan? Good morning.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly, Ms. Maples, good morning. My name is Nathan Best, Permit Services Supervisor, and this morning I'll be providing you with a brief update on efforts as they relate to the Missouri Conservation Permit Card and its deployment, which is scheduled for the spring of 2017. In August, regulations were approved to allow the department to develop the Missouri Conservation Permit Card as a durable alternative to carrying paper permits or electronic devices while in the field. The permit card will replace the heritage card and be used as a single source for hunter education verification, permit purchases, and permit verification. Note that the heritage card will remain valid. However, in order for a card to be carried in lieu of paper or electronic permits, the permit card must be possessed. The permit card will be made available to the public beginning April 1st, 2017. To ensure the public and permit vendors are aware of the permit card, a communication plan has been developed, which includes utilizing social media, email campaigns, as well as local media outlets to raise awareness. The permit card will cost $2, does not expire, and for that added personalized touch, hunters and anglers are able to select from 4 nature-inspired backgrounds to have printed on their permit card. Since the permit card does not expire, as additional permits are purchased, the privileges are there in fact loaded onto the card. Active permits are able to be verified by going online, using the Moe Hunting and Moe Fishing apps, at a permit vendor location, or by contacting a public MDC office. The permit card will cover all privilege types with the following exceptions. Due to notching and checking requirements, as well as state and federal regulations, the permit card will not be valid for daily trout tags, deer and turkey permits, and the federal duck stand. As the department continues to evaluate how we distribute licenses across the state, our main goal is to continuously improve how hunters and anglers interact with Missouri's resources, and the Missouri Conservation Permit Card will assist us in doing that. The permit card will improve the convenience of carrying your permits while in the field and return the durability of permits of the past. This concludes the update on the Missouri Conservation Permit Card. Once again, I'd like to thank the Commission for the opportunity to meet with you today, and will now address any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Nathan. Commissioner Bennett.
I just want to thank you, Nathan, because I know you personally have worked to help people through some of these processes in the past, and I applaud what you've done here today. So, and I know there's a team behind you that equally deserves that praise. So thank you very much.
Yeah, my comments are that as we've grown and expanded into the technology and the online permitting systems, change is always hard. But all the feedback that I've gotten from the public is that, while initially there's some people that are a little reticent to make that change, people have really embraced these changes. And so, again, I commend the staff. I am curious, what do you see the future? What's in the hopper as it relates to deer and turkey tags, or the bridge between electronic world and a paper world or a card world?
We will continue to work with protection because the overall goal is to ensure that compliance with all regulations. Right now, the way the regulations are established, we have the notching and checking requirements. So as we begin to look at other states as far as how they handle those types of processes and work with protection and the county agents, we'll try and see if there's a way to build that gap between the electronic age and what regulations we actually have in place today.
Nathan, I feel very confident that we're on the right path here. I'd like to ask some questions to kind of underscore how important this is and how well it's working. Can you give me any idea how many people have downloaded and used the Mohawk app now?
I have to rely on IT for a little bit of backup, but I believe we're well over 60,000 downloads of the app. I'm safe in that
And
number.
that's up from how many last year, approximately?
We're actually around 220,000.
I'm more on a monthly basis.
Yeah, so the current number is about 220,000, and last year at this time we had about how many? Thanks, Doug, I appreciate it, just because I want to underscore that this is a desire that our public has and we're trying to serve it.
Certainly. At this time, we have a little over 220,000. I don't recall the specific numbers from last year. I can get you that information.
It was quite a bit less, I didn't recall.
It was quite a bit less, because we had a large push this past fall.
This is great, outstanding work, both of you, thank you.
And for those customers that call in with complaints, related to paper licenses, once we kind of had a plan in place to move towards the card, we mentioned the card, they're anticipating April 1st. So
I think the card's a great move, thank you. Okay, let's move on to our next item, item 5, Aaron Jeffries.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have the next item on the agenda. For the Department of Conservation, public involvement is a vital part of our success because public knowledge and support are critical for the Department of Conservation to remain relevant in the 21st century. Looking back, the Department has a strong history of gathering public input. One only needs to look at the first 50 years of a wonderful book of the history of the Department to recognize some of our past efforts. In 1938, the Department began an aggressive information campaign that included a full-time public relations officer that oversaw the Missouri conservationists, involvement in various affairs, and production of a film series called Conservation Newsroom. Look forward to 1939, another very successful initiative started by Forest Division was Showboat. Showboat was a vehicle the department traveled around in the Ozarks with a generator and a projector and showed stories about the department and the importance of wildfire prevention. Look forward to the 1950s. Our conservation agents started using radio to talk about hunting and fishing regulations. And another timely example in the first 50 years was on March 1st, 1977, the first of 13 public meetings was held in St. Louis to seek public input on the new conservation sales tax. While the first 50 years makes no mention of Facebook, Twitter, or live streaming like we're doing today, the department continues to adapt and find ways to engage citizens and to gather their input and their thoughts and feelings. Just this last year, the department provided over 147 public engagement opportunities. Those include smallmouth bass regulation meetings, CWD meetings, waterfowl meetings, annual hunter and landowner surveys, and the conservation roundtables that I frequently do with legislators. As we look forward, the department would like to host several open house forums during our 80th anniversary. The open house forums would be hosted around the state to encourage citizen participation, gather public input, identify potential issues or areas of concern, encourage greater collaboration and partnerships, and gather input on the department's strategic plan. Staff are recommending the meetings be held during the summer and fall of 2017 and potentially into the winter of 2018. Potential open house topics include regulation review, conservation area plans, habitat management, infrastructure on conservation areas, public land assistance and partnerships, strategic planning for the future, our numerous outreach programs, and then regional highlights or hot topics like chronic wasting disease, feral hogs, black bear, elk restoration, and many others that can be used to really intrigue folks and attract folks to these meetings. We also plan on reaching out to our partners like Conservation Federation of Missouri and the Missouri Farm Bureau for their input on potential topics and meeting locations. Commissioners, this is a wonderful opportunity to further engage Missourians and discuss with them the future of conservation in Missouri. If there are no questions, I'm seeking the Commission's approval for the Department to host a series of open house forums around the state during the commission's 80th anniversary.
I would entertain a motion to approve the recommendation.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
that.
Okay, any discussion, comments, questions?
Do you have a goal, specific goal in these events and what you're trying to, what you hope the outcome or product of this will be?
Good question, Commissioner. I think part of it is to make sure that we're in line with where citizens want their conservation department to be. As we've heard at our CWD meetings and other meetings, citizens really like that face-to-face contact with our staff. We heard that this year during the deer season when all our staff were afield at the check stations. Hunters really like that one-on-one time. So I think, in my opinion, that is one of our major goals, to remain relevant to the citizens of the state by that one-on-one open house meetings, through those open house meetings.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Commissioner?
Yes. Aaron, how are we gonna engage more of the non-traditional populations across the state?
One thing I've been working with Michelle in policy, and one thing we're looking at doing is in our large urban areas, both St. Louis and Kansas City, is having those meetings in non-traditional locations instead of going to the Discovery Center or Powder Valley in St. Louis. We'll probably look at going to a community center in the downtown area, or a church community center versus one of our facilities. And I think that will attract those non-traditional audiences.
So how will we do the outreach to those groups?
We will be developing a communication plan after the commission's approval of this action item. We have a meeting set up next week with staff.
Outstanding. Yes, sir.
That comment, following up on Commissioner Bradford's comment, I think that there's a lot of other conservation groups, whether it's the Magnificent Missouri people or the Greenway groups out of St. Louis, for example. I think there's a lot of people in those groups that aren't consumptive conservationists, but nonetheless care about the resource. And I could certainly help, and I'm sure others can help get the mailing lists and the leadership names to reach out to those groups, to include them in those meetings. I think those people have a keen interest.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion is made, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Jim?
Chairman, yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you know, for over a decade, the department has had a goal to build a warehouse for its geographic information and the associated data layers. Achieving this goal has not been easy and required both staff thinking and technology to mature. As the department grew greater acceptance for data management standards, technology also evolved to make warehousing and accessing geographic information across our statewide network easier. With this commission's support, over the last 5 years, staff have been able to complete significant work toward the goal of a central geographic information warehouse. So today, Doug Fees will describe our now operational Enterprise Geographic Information System, or our EGIS, and the services it provides to staff and our partners. Richie Jenkins will describe the soon-to-be-released LANS application that replaces the department's manual and paper-heavy LANS tracking system. And this new application also relies heavily on the EGIS. Jacob Carriego will describe our nearly configured infrastructure asset management system, which will become the department's primary solution for tracking and managing our infrastructure assets. This system, too, as you will see in the presentation, is heavily dependent on the newly established EGIS. So with that, I welcome Doug Fees to the podium.
Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Jennifer, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly. As Jennifer mentioned, we will be sharing about the Enterprise GIS, or EGIS as we call it, the land system and the infrastructure asset management system, or IAMS as you see here. There are many details but we will walk through an example that hopefully we can all relate to. That is, we are going to approach the discussion with a parallel that most of us hopefully are familiar with, that is building a house. And just as we all want a strong foundation for our own personal house, we also want a strong foundation for our lands and infrastructure asset systems. That strong foundation, as Jennifer indicated, is the department's EGIS system. I will begin the journey by talking about the foundational elements of the house, starting with where we want to build our house. If we don't know where our house will be built, it would be difficult to design and build it. For example, we wouldn't know whether we could have a basement, or whether there are any restrictions on numbers of stories or square footage, or what utilities might be available. In similar fashion, without the EGIS system as the foundation for lands and infrastructure, it would be difficult to design and build these systems, as we would not have a single, efficient, and consistent way of managing the GIS data required by these and many other systems. To best understand what the EGIS is, I want to briefly establish a common understanding of what a geographic information system is. By definition, as is shown here on the screen, GIS is any information system that allows you to store, to edit, analyze, share, or display geographic information. Let's look at a picture to hopefully help better illustrate that concept. If you take a map in the bottom of this picture and you slice it horizontally into different layers of data, like is shown here for assets, streets, soils, and so on, you begin to see what EGIS is. GIS is simply an information system that stores geographic data in the form of points, lines, and polygons to define where things are in relation to the real world. In most cases, when we use GIS, we're trying to link data about an asset to the location of where that asset is physically located. Once we make that link, we can then do a number of things with that data. For the department, we created the EGIS system, or GIS data warehouse, as Jennifer described it, to help us centrally manage our GIS data. In its basic form, the EGIS system is made up of servers, data storage space, and software, and contains a large database to store GIS data. This enables us to store and manage the department's key GIS data once, creating a single source of truth that we can then reuse in a number of ways, and thus creating a strong foundation for lands, infrastructure assets, and many other systems. To date, we've developed nearly 30 applications that are utilizing the centralized EGIS system. For example, this system provides GIS data to the online Stream Team application, to the Natural Heritage Review application, to the MoFishing mobile application. And we've also created numerous interactive maps that are available to the public, the department's website. Examples include the Confirmed Map Line report that you see here, and more recently, an interactive map of the department's new outdoor recreational access program. One of the many benefits of this GIS technology is that it helps to create a sense of transparency and provides for ease of access, as citizens or field staff alike can easily get to these maps and the related information themselves without having to make a phone call or a special request. We also have other GIS-based projects in progress, such as the work to replace the existing internal and public-facing Atlas applications. Further, if you're a hunter or an angler and use conservation land to do those activities, then knowing where that land is very important to you. Well, there is good news. We now store conservation area boundaries, bodies of water, and 65 other GIS data layers in the central EGIS database for any application or asset to use. We then take that GIS location data and we logically link it with other data related to a specific application, such as lands. By linking the data together, we can now easily provide a geographical representation of the MDC land in our new land system. In like fashion, for the infrastructure asset management system, once it is fully configured and tested, we can use that same conservation area boundary GIS data and link it to business data about the assets on those conservation areas and use it to help us manage these assets. This truly illustrates that the EGIS system literally is the foundational system for the lands and infrastructure asset systems. While we now have an understanding of the EGIS system, it's also important to know that the system is being used by numerous staff in almost every division, many of which are engaged in helping to keep the GIS data current and the system operational. We will, of course, continue to leverage the EGIS system for land, for infrastructure assets management, and many other GIS-based systems, as it helps us know where the department's GIS-based assets are located and establishes a firm foundation for these systems. I'll now turn the presentation over to Richie Jenkins, who will share an overview of the land system.
We have questions, Doug, should we save them for the end of the presentation, and then you'll all be available to us, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Doug. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Director, I will continue our discussion about building a house with an overview of the land system. As we walk down the path of the decisions and the impacts that are associated with building a house, one of the important steps is finding a piece of land to build your house on. Once that piece of land is identified, there are several factors that have to be considered. What is the price of the property? Are there easements running through this property? Are there existing structures on that property? Based on the cost, what would the property taxes be? Are there utilities currently on this property? Where is your funding coming from? These are all factors that have to be considered and tracked when purchasing a piece of land to build, but also a major consideration that has to be evaluated by MDC when purchasing or inheriting a piece of property. This parcel of land is the building block that infrastructure asset management and an enterprise GIS system utilize to track various details that we will see as we move through this presentation. Once that purchase of land is made, then begins the real work of getting the property improvements that need to be made to start the build, such as clearing the lot for build, getting the appropriate utility easements, access easements, and driveway. With MDC, details about the land such as easements, land boundaries, and funding sources have to be captured in the existing lands database. This also includes the details associated with the real estate transaction, such as the value of donation, the cost of purchase, the year purchased, and location information, to name a few. My personal accountant would need to know those details for tax and other purposes. From an MDC perspective, those pieces of information are necessary for our federal reporting and useful to help answer inquiries about our various properties. So in the previous slide, we talked about the land for our house, but here's how this connects to our MDC land software. This is a screenshot that shows our 1,192 properties spatially displayed on a map, which represents 3,356 unique parcels of land that collectively make up those areas across the state. The new land system has the ability to quickly see from a map perspective where our areas are located within the state. This means that field staff throughout the state will have access to this system to gain needed information in real time about MDC lands. It also has the ability to zoom in and see individual parcels within their boundaries, easements, and realty transactions that we discussed earlier. This area highlighted in yellow is Sunklands Conservation Area. This area has 33 distinct parcels of land that make up that area, with as many as 4 funding sources per parcel on that area, and 39 buildings or structures that have assets in and around them that we will need to track. So you can see the breadth of the details that we are tracking. In addition, the new land system gives us the capability to track multiple funding sources, which we did not have the capability to do previously, such as commission funds, wildlife restoration, or sports fish restoration funds. It is features like this and others that give us increased analysis and reporting capabilities to meet our inquiry requests as well as our federal requirements. The old lands accounting system was a very manual process and typically involved a phone call to a select set of individuals who would have to go to one of several file cabinets to find needed paper documentation that may or may not be easily found. The new system will allow anyone with access to find those same documents in a single location without a call to central office. This will give us the capability to do the following functions in a more automated fashion: recording land acquisition, land disposal, easements, leases and agreements, forest cropland, and payment in lieu of taxes. Lands was the first asset that needed to be configured, since all other assets will reside upon lands. This is the first building block in the overall asset management effort. We're excited to get that rolled out with the capability that it will provide the department. This concludes my portion of the discussion on the land system, and I will now turn it over to Jacob for his update on the infrastructure asset management effort.
Thank you. Morning, Jake.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Richie. Good morning, Commissioners, Director Pauly. I will build upon Richie and Doug's analogy of building a home to provide you an update on the infrastructure asset management system. For anyone that has participated in the construction of their own home, you will remember there are hundreds of decisions to make along the way. Should you build a basement or slab foundation? Single story or two? Should it have siding or brick? Formica or granite countertops? Carpet or hardwood? Should it have 20 or 30-year shingles? Should the furnace and water heater use natural gas or electric? Each decision has short and long-term implications on your budget, building performance, and ultimately your satisfaction with your home. Each one of these decisions has led to your very own home. Everything is brand new and clean. All the equipment runs efficiently, requiring very little of your attention. But anyone who has owned a home knows that as time marches on, equipment wears out, hailstorms pop up, and home maintenance needs start to dull the shine on your new home.
Or the IT system went back.
As a new homeowner, key pieces of information will help you plan for the home maintenance projects that will keep your family warm, dry, and comfortable as the years go by. For most home maintenance projects, the equipment brand and material type will influence how long the item is expected to last and how much it will cost to repair or replace it. Once you've gathered all this information, the most important question left to answer is, how will I pay for it? Now, conventional wisdom will tell you the water heater pictured here in your new home should last about 10 years and cost about $1,000 to replace. The furnace shown here should last you about 15 years and cost you about $5,000 to replace. These are reasonable expenses that can be planned for in most family budgets, given enough time and good financial discipline. But life doesn't always go as planned. Let's say 5 years after you build your new home, you inherit a nice Southern California rancher with a cedar-shaped roof. The previous occupants maintained the home well while raising their blended family through one misadventure after another. Closer inspection indicates the roof is approaching the end of the expected 30-year life, but some minor repairs could buy you a few years. Quotes from local contractors indicate the roof may cost as much as $50,000 to replace. 5 years later, you inherit a creepy old house.
Getting closer to my house.
The previous occupants were a little eccentric, but the house is well built with a slate roof, clapboard siding, and hand-laid stone stairs, which are not ADA compliant. Closer inspection reveals an ancient furnace running on borrowed time. It appears there is asbestos insulation on the air ducts, and all the plumbing has lead fittings. The wiring appears to be original to the house and is a fire hazard in urgent need of replacement. Quotes from local contractors indicate repairs will cost over half the appraised value of the house. So you are now the proud owner of 3 different houses. Each one is from a different era, was constructed with different materials, with different maintenance needs, and different life expectancies. Each one is in need of repairs. Some are urgent, some can be delayed, and others you're just running on borrowed time. You have a limited budget, so how should you prioritize the urgent repairs, predict future repairs, and then put together a financial plan for completing the projects? These questions are at the heart of infrastructure asset management for MDC. So if the previous example is extended to all of the infrastructure accumulated over the last 80 years on the 1,192 properties owned or managed by MDC, the magnitude quickly becomes apparent. MDC has over 1,700 buildings across the state. Some buildings, like storage sheds, deliver very basic services compared to more complex buildings like nature centers and hatcheries. MDC has nearly 1,000 miles of roads with over 500 acres of parking lots and 50 vehicular bridges. Most provide public access, but some are critical to delivering resource management services at hatcheries and wetlands. At wetlands, there are almost 50 pump stations and nearly 1,000 water control structures that help biologists manage wetland resources. The variety of infrastructure in these few examples demonstrates the breadth of MDC's infrastructure portfolio. But I ask you to pause and think about the individual components that work together to make a nature center or a pump station function. Those components include compressors, backflow preventers, valves, electric motors, boilers, hydraulic actuators, flow meters, submersible pumps, vertical turbines, variable frequency drives, diesel power units, and transfer switches. The depth of MDC's infrastructure portfolio runs very deep. It's this breadth and depth of infrastructure that helps make conservation so successful in Missouri, but it's also what makes managing the infrastructure portfolio so complex. So, just like you would do with your family when deciding to build your own home, we brought together a cross-functional team in 2011 and identified what success would look like if MDC implemented an infrastructure asset management system. The team identified 4 key elements for a successful system. Ultimately, a system with these elements will help MDC decide if something should be run to failure, like a small drainage culvert on a low-volume road, or if it should be replaced ahead of time before it fails, like a critical water valve in a hatchery. After the team identified the key elements of a successful system, they researched what it would take to build a system with those elements. This discovery project was similar to checking local building code requirements and subdivision covenants, attending a Home Builders Association trade show, and then meeting with a few contractors before designing your home to see if what you need can be built at a price you can afford. After the discovery project was complete, the team started in 2013 to build the operational aspects of MDC's infrastructure asset management system from the ground up. The team worked to identify and define 207 unique asset types across 5 infrastructure networks. Those networks are fish propagation, education, intensively managed wetlands, administrative, and general conservation. Each network represents a general grouping of assets that provide services focused on specific outcomes. Standardized procedures for evaluating the team then developed decay curves for each asset type based upon industry research and staff experience with conservation-specific infrastructure. A decay curve like the one shown here for fire alarms depicts the expected decline in condition over the life of the asset. Standardized procedures for evaluating asset condition and calculating replacement costs were then developed by the team. These repeatable processes were designed to give consistent results independent of the user's infrastructure expertise. The team also developed reporting models for key performance indicators as well as standardized procedures for managing the quality of data fed into the new system. The software vendor then worked with the team to develop the GIS data model, as seen here, for all 207 infrastructure assets and uploaded it into the department's eGIS environment that Doug described earlier. Finally, the team field tested the GIS data model to ensure it worked as intended in the EGIS environment with the department's GPS equipment as shown here. At this time, the team is working with the vendor to configure the software. As shown in the screen capture from the user manual, the software will be able to simultaneously display business information about specific infrastructure assets with the associated location information. The team is on target for completion of their configuration work this summer. After the software is ready to receive data this summer, the team will focus their attention on starting the inventory and condition assessment work. The fish propagation network, which includes 5 cold water and 4 warm water hatcheries, will be the first phase of data collection. These 9 hatcheries have a high infrastructure density per acre and represent 2/3 of the asset types in the MDC portfolio. This work would take 2 years to complete with current resource allocations. Now, if we come back to the house analogy, a lot of work has been accomplished and our new home will be ready for us to start moving into this summer. Moving in will take a lot of work and we have an important decision ahead. Will our family pack everything up in our own trucks and move in by ourselves? Or will we hire a moving truck and then move in by ourselves? Or will we hire a moving company to do it all in our direction? As we all know from personal experience, making that decision requires balancing desired timeline with the family budget. That concludes our presentation. Doug shared an overview of the EGIS system that serves as the foundation for nearly 30 MDC applications, including lands and infrastructure asset management. Richie shared an overview of the new lands management system, which will improve the department's ability to manage realty functions and streamline access to information for staff. And you also learned we are on track for summer implementation of the infrastructure asset management system. We will then start field work on the fish propagation network. Doug, Richie, and I appreciate the opportunity to share this important work with you, and we are happy to answer any questions you may have.
A great presentation, everybody, and certainly something that I've been anxious to see come to fruition. I think probably 3 or 4 times a year at meetings, I kind of dig the spurs and I'm trying to move this project forward. So it sounds like we see light at the end of the tunnel here. Jacob, in your presentation, you mentioned with current resources, 2 years with current resources.
Correct.
So if you had more resources, what would that be, and how much would it change that timeline, or would it?
The team is putting together a menu, if you will, of options to accelerate data collection and condition assessment. We will have that information available for the commissioner.
And why would it be important? Is it important to accelerate the timeline? I mean, are we losing ground by taking time to get there, or does it matter if we push this harder?
It's a matter of balancing the information that's needed and the benefits the agency will get from that information versus learning to walk before you run. So we need to find that balance.
And Richie, you mentioned the automation should, well, I guess the notes I wrote were, you were basically talking about the automation aspect of this.
Right.
And so to me, automation in business usually means savings or efficiencies. So what I didn't hear is anybody elaborate on, is this going to have a cost savings, or have we quantified what the benefits of doing this? Can we do more with fewer people? Can we, by having greater predictability, do we estimate savings because we're managing these assets before they totally break? What's the benefit?
I think from an outside perspective, there's definitely savings there. We haven't went down the path of quantifying that yet, but it's definitely something that we could do. We definitely see a savings from a time and staffing perspective, and this kind of fits into the direction for the lean work that we're about to embark on in some of our other areas. I think this would fold into that nicely. So.
Well, I think it's sort of intuitive that we would expect that there would be savings, but I think to the public and to the taxpayer, we're spending a lot of money on the programs and we're dedicating a lot of resources to implementing the program. And I think we ought to be able to at least keep it, what are the metrics, or how do we measure this to justify what these expenditures are and why we need these resources, or the benefits of the program would be a suggestion.
I think it's probably Doug that I'd be asking this question of. The broader view is, will we have the ability when we're looking at different conservation areas to expand out like Google Maps? Or is it just, because I think currently when you look at one, it's just that one particular area and you can't really expand out.
Yes, the system will allow us to basically look at the entire state, or we can zoom into one particular area, or zoom into a particular region, or a senatorial district, or a number of different ways.
Because I've had a number of folks praise the old atlas, the huge booklet, and how useful it is. And so I would hope that we would have the same capability that we have in that big book.
Yes.
I know it will represent cost savings and be more user-friendly on phones.
Absolutely, yes.
But I have gotten a little frustrated in using the current, and just you're limited to where you are just looking at that one conservation area, and you might go a quarter of a mile down the road and there's another one, but it's not usable.
Right.
I applaud your effort in trying to bring that to us. I know it's a lot of work, but a lot of people with our electronic use of permits and everything are using their phones more, so I appreciate that. Also, Mr. Jenkins, the business side of it is real important as well, and I'm coordinating this whole effort together with everyone is really what we as commissioners need to help make advised decisions on these land purchases, and then in building new and replacement. Thanks for Jacob. But I would point out that annually we pay $800,000 in bill payments, and I'm assuming that's some of the data you would be collecting and providing with us. And our cart payments that we also pay annually is $1.2 million annually. So incorporating that business side with the hands-on side that Jacob has, and the IT side, the visual side, the user-friendly side that Doug has, I think this is a phenomenal effort, and I know it's been a huge undertaking, so I applaud it, and thank you for providing it to us commissioners so we can be better informed and make better decisions.
Very well.
Appreciate it, thank you. And thank you too, Jacob, because I know you've got such unique, sophisticated pieces of equipment that you have to maintain, and sometimes they can be fairly costly, and sometimes we as commissioners don't always, fit into our home building plans. So appreciate that too, Jacob. Great effort.
Commissioner?
I'll be brief. Just follow up on one of the comments that Commissioner Bradford made was, you hinted at the land acquisition. I mean, I've got a note here. I'd very much like to see how this could be used as a tool to help us be smarter and as our strategy evolves about land acquisition practices.
I can't let you sit down without telling you that I like everything about what you've accomplished thus far. This is a remarkable achievement already. As close as I can get in my personal experience to what this can mean is to look at Midway USA and their earning the Malcolm Baldrige Award as the best run business in America, repeatedly. This inventory of our assets and their qualities that we hold in the public trust, I can't imagine a better way for us to demonstrate to the public that we're being responsible stewards of what we've been given. Thank you. Okay, next. Number 7.
Good morning.
Morning, Terry.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Pauling. the next series of minutes here, I will be describing our deliberations of the Regulations Committee. We met on January 18th and briefly on January 19th, 2017, for the annual code review of the Wildlife Code. Recommendations for the 2017-2018 code changes were reviewed by the committee and are presented today for your approval. Proposed amendments for commission consideration are listed as action items beginning on page 1 of my report of the Regulations Committee. Copies of rule changes with associated justifications are appended to that report. Unless otherwise noted, all changes will become effective as soon as possible. Those designed to be effective as soon as possible have an anticipated effective date of July 30th, 2017. Commissioners, recall that a statute passed by the Missouri Legislature in 2014 required each state agency to conduct a thorough review of its regulations every 5 years to determine if those rules remain relevant and necessary. The Department of Conservation was among the first group of agencies to conduct this review, and the department submitted its final report in June of 2016. We believe this exercise was very valuable, and the Regulations Committee welcomed the opportunity to thoroughly review the Wildlife Code for relevancy and consistency. Minor discrepancies were detected, and today I'll present 4 proposed amendments to address those issues. I'll identify them as I move through my presentation. Mr. Chairman, to keep discussions organized and to ensure clarity, I will address proposed changes brought forward by individual divisions. First division I intend to work through is the Wildlife Division, who brought forward a proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-8.510 of use of traps. This amendment removes a certification requirement for cable restraint users because travel to available certification courses is burdensome, and holding classes is an unnecessary expenditure of state resources. The original concern that illegal sets of cable restraint devices would harm free-roaming dogs has proven to be a non-issue. When contacted, the Missouri Trappers Association voiced support for elimination of the certification requirement. Mr. Chairman and Commission, given the 2017 cable restraint training courses have been set, we will move forward with those. The anticipated effective date for this proposed amendment will be March 1 of 2018. This is the only proposed amendment presented for your consideration today with that effective date. Mr. Chairman and Commission, I request Commission approval of this action item as described.
Do I have a motion?
Discussion after or questions?
Yes, discussion after. Motion to approve,
You have a motion.
and second. Okay, discussion?
I'm curious if it's going to remove the requirement for the certification, but it doesn't become effective till next March. Doesn't that miss a big part of trapping season next year?
Well, the idea here, Commissioner, because we've scheduled these training sessions, we don't want it to become effective before these training sessions are completed. That's the delay.
Am I missing something? I mean, if we're removing it, why is it important to not affect the training sessions? We're removing the requirement, right?
Correct. But the idea here is we've scheduled training. We believe that we'd like to follow through with that. People have committed to come, and we want to make sure that that occurs before we and move the change through where we don't have that confusion of canceled classes and that type of thing.
Any questions? Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of the motion as offered signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. To address the discrepancy identified during the Regulations Committee rule review, Wildlife Division introduced a proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-11.155 decoys and blinds that adds verbiage to accurately incorporate specific regulations published in the annual Upper Mississippi Conservation Area Waterfowl Hunting Information Booklet by reference in the Wildlife Code. This amendment also corrects an inaccurate reference in the authority section of the rule, which we discovered during our rule review dictated by the legislature. With that, Mr. Chairman, I request commission approval of this action item as described.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you. Continuing on, the next set of proposed amendments brought forward by the Wildlife Division modifies regulations on areas owned or leased by the department. Commissioners, in November of 2016, the department entered into a supplemental agreement with the Corps of Engineers that added 809 acres to the management lease for Truman Reservoir management lands. The lease agreement specifies that 245 of the 809 acre addition will remain closed to hunting in the designated wildlife refuge. The proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-11.115 closings establishes that refuge and prohibits other recreational activities to further reduce disturbance of waterfowl in the Grand River Bottoms Wildlife Management Area portion of those lands. Mr. Chairman and Commissioner, I request approval of this action item.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. Moving along, the department works closely with citizens to provide opportunities for them to use and enjoy conservation areas throughout the state. Requests for additional trail riding opportunities for horseback riding enthusiasts led to a thorough evaluation of areas that could potentially support that activity. As a result, staff proposed an amendment to 3 CSR 10-11.130, vehicles, bicycles, horses, and horseback riding, to allow horseback riding as an authorized use on Whetstone Creek Conservation Area. This activity will be allowed through the issuance of a special use permit. Mr. Chair and Commission, I request approval of this action item.
So moved.
Any discussion?
No, I just think this is a tough one, and I just hope everybody in the audience and people listening appreciate how much time goes into getting stakeholder input. The horseback riding community is very passionate about what they do. They form clubs. Sometimes they're very good, citizens. They trim their own trails. They do a lot of good work that we recognize, and at the same time, there has to be limits on what they do because large numbers of horses can cause problems on the trails and erosion and creeks and streams. And, I hope people realize how hard this body works to find the right balance there. And I know those regulations are tough ones.
Appreciate the comments, and it's a credit to staff and the relationship in this particular instance, working with the Show Me Missouri Backcountry Horsemen that wanted to find additional opportunity, and their hard work brought us to this point.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as offered signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, Tom.
Thank you. The next three proposed amendments to 3 CSR 10-11.180, hunting, general provisions and seasons, establish hunting provisions on the Grand River Bottoms Wildlife Management Area portion of Truman Reservoir Management Lands per the supplemental agreement with the Corps of Engineers as described earlier. It also identified hunting methods allowed on the new Church Farm Conservation Area by adding it to the list of areas for firearms firing single projectiles larger than a .22 caliber rimfire prohibited except for deer hunting as authorized in the annual fall deer and turkey booklet, and creates opportunities for mentored hunts that support the department's effort to recruit and retain hunters by adding the Charles W. Green and Forest 44 conservation areas to the list of areas where hunting is allowed during managed hunts or with a valid area daily hunting permit. Again, Commission, I request approval of these action items as described.
Such a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thanks, Commission. I acknowledge your patience in this, but given this is the annual code review, we need to be deliberate, and there are several here, so I will continue. Given the previous change to 3 CSR 10-11.180 that added the Charles W. Green Conservation Area to the list of areas where hunting is only allowed during managed hunts or with a valid daily hunting permit, Wildlife Division's final proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-11.186 waterfowl hunting removes the area from the list of areas where managed waterfowl hunts are allowed to avoid redundancy in the wildlife code. Mr. Chair and Commission, I request approval of these action items as described.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Continue, we'll now shift gears to fisheries emphasis. Commissioners, as you know, the department has a long history of working with other public entities to ensure that all citizens have access to quality, close-to-home fishing opportunities through agreements utilizing the Community Assistance Program, which we know as CAP. Fisheries Division introduced a series of proposed amendments that establish a new winter trout fishery in northwest Missouri, identifies closed hours for uses other than fishing and conservation-related recreation, restricts the use of boats and motors, and sets provisions for hunting and fishing trapping opportunities on areas managed in cooperation with other public entities through the CAP agreement method. Commissioners, I request your approval of recommended changes for the following: 3 CSR 10-12.109 closed hours, 3 CSR 10-12.110 use of boats and motors, 3 CSR 10-12.115 bullfrogs and green frogs, 3 CSR 10-12.125 hunting and trapping, 3 CSR 10-12.130 fishing, general provisions and seasons, 3 CSR 10-12.135 fishing methods, and 3 CSR 10-12.140 fishing, bailing, and possession limits as described. And as you note in my detailed report, those areas are identified in the detailed report. So with that, Mr. Commission, or with that, Mr. Director, Mr. Chair and Commission, I ask for your
Dave.
You have a motion.
Do we have a second? Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you.
Okay, Fisheries Division, the next proposed amendment deals with trying to prevent invasive species. Fisheries Division introduced a proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-6.415 restricted zones that would help prevent accidental bait bucket introductions of Asian carp into Clearwater Lake and Lake Wapatella by restricting live bait collection methods to pole and line only. Asian carp are known to exist in the Black and St. Francis rivers below Clearwater Lake and Lake Wapatella, respectively. Currently, anglers are allowed to use all legal methods to collect bait at these locations. Asian carp are easily misidentified with other species and could be accidentally introduced to these lakes when used as bait. This amendment also corrects that inaccurate reference in the authority section of the rule. With that, Mr. Chair and Commission, I request approval of this action item.
Do we have such a motion? Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you. Marching on here, Fisheries, final proposal 3 CSR 10-11.186 waterfowl hunting would allow hunters to take snow geese at Lion Pony Lake Conservation Area during the conservation order. This change will help keep geese off the lake and reduce nutrient input from the thousands of snow geese that use Lion Pony Lake in late winter, early spring. Mr. Chair and Commission, I would request approval of this proposed amendment as described.
Do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I think we ought to send them home.
Some ammo.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, we're moving on to Protection Division, their input in the annual code review. The division recognizes that non-resident college students rarely reside near the department office. Protection Division recommended a proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-5.220 resident and non-resident permits that would allow those individuals to purchase their permits from the department office via phone, with a credit card or debit card, or by mail with a check or money order, thus eliminating the need for them to physically visit an office. Given that those students will no longer be required to present proof of college enrollment to obtain the permits, they will be required to carry proof of their full-time student status when afield. This amendment also corrects that inaccurate reference in the authority section of the rule. With that, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I request your approval of this action item as described.
Do we have such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I take it the student ID will be satisfactory.
As long as it's correct.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Okay, the last three proposed changes brought forward by Protection Division were identified during the Regulations Committee Comprehensive Rule Review in 2016. Each of these recommended changes will ensure consistency and simplify regulations to better serve citizens. Proposed amendments to 3 CSR 10-4.137 wildlife identification and 3 CSR 10-4.140 possession, storage, and processing would allow the hunters to use their unique conservation ID number rather than their full name and address to label their harvest, by simplifying how they keep track of taking game and possession. Mr. Chairman, I request Commission approval of these action items as described.
Do I have such a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I'm just curious, is there a reason, or has there been a complaint about the name versus the number? What drove that?
I'm going to have to rely on Protection Division Chief M. That's wherever he. Larry,
Some people have a sensitivity to leaving their name
Larry,
out in public.
step here, 'cause
Oh, that's right, sorry.
Good morning, Chief.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Director Rhonda. Some people have sensitivity to their name being out in public someplace, so that number is a unique enough identifier that we can use that to determine who that belongs to. That's the reason years ago that we started using permit numbers and things like that instead of their full name and address is allowable.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. We even had folks at the Conservation Federation annual convention that wrote their ticket number down instead of their name on the silent auction. Some people are like that, aren't they, Chief? Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Protection's final proposed amendment to 3 CSR 10-10.715 resident and non-resident fur dealers reports requirements would reduce the regulatory burden and eliminate unnecessary paperwork by removing a requirement for annual fur dealers to report to be notarized. Mr. Chair and Commission, I request approval of this action item.
Do I have such a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries, sir.
Thank you. Commissioners, Forestry Division proposed 3 changes to 3 CSR 10-11.180 hunting, general provisions and seasons that correct the names of existing areas, add a recently acquired area, and remove references to areas no longer owned or managed by the department. Mr. Chair and Commission, I request approval of this action item as described.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair and Commission, the final action item for your consideration was brought forth by the Resource Science Division. Proposed changes to 3 CSR 10-4.200 chronic wasting disease management zone modify the mandatory testing requirement for deer taken within the CWD management zone to allow the department more flexibility to rotate and focus sampling efforts. Note that a reference to the annual fall and deer turkey hunting regulations and information booklet was added to this rule. This change will allow the department to notify citizens annually of specific counties where mandatory sampling activities will occur. Essentially, as we learn and manage our chronic wasting disease, there may be ebb and flow of counties that need to be added on an annual basis or removed. And this provides that flexibility to do that as we learn more from our sampling efforts and our management efforts.
Do we have such a motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you. I have a few more comments and then, that I'd like to share with the commission. As you know, Governor Greitens recently issued an executive order 17-03 containing requirements for state agencies to complete an effort to reduce and improve all state regulations. Our general counsel is working with members of the governor's staff to understand and fulfill the governor's expectations for the department with regards to the executive order. Thus far, there have been very positive discussions with the governor's office regarding the citizens' creation of the commission and its independent responsibility for regulation of fish, forest, and wildlife resources. Department staff continue to work with the governor's office, fulfilling our mutual goal of reducing regulations and making sure all regulations are understandable and necessary. The proposed amendments that were approved today will be filed with the Secretary of State's office on March 1 of 2017, following the end of the executive order's temporary suspension of rulemaking. As the last item of its business, the Regulations Committee was reported to by herpetologist Jeff Riegler, who provided an overview of important past actions related to commercial turtle harvest regulations and shared the commercial turtle harvest working group's recommended timeline to address potential changes to those regulations, which include plans for stakeholder engagement. The committee reviewed the proposed timeline and indicated support for moving forward with the evaluation of commercial turtle harvest as proposed by the timeline. We will continue that deliberation, and at some point there will be a presentation to the commission on the reality of commercial turtle harvest in Missouri, and we're also exploring how that might be for a recreational harvest also. Commissioners, since my last regulations report, citizens have provided input on regulations pertaining to deer and turkey, hunting, commercial turtle harvest, and rules that govern activities allowed on public land. A summary of those comments is included in my formal report beginning on page 4. I would state that daily we receive important input from citizens on a whole host of subjects that related to the regulation and sustenance of our fish forest and wildlife resources. Upcoming meetings of the Regulations Committee are scheduled for March 16th, April 12th, July 27th will be our mid-year code review, September 27th, and November 16th of 2017. And with that, Mr. Chair and Commission, unless there are questions, this concludes my Regulations Committee report.
Commissioner?
I just have a question. When we get these comments section in our books, it seems like there's always one or two or a few about family members returning out-of-state family farms or people that own and operate businesses and own land in Missouri that live across state line. Where's the Regs Committee on reviewing that issue? I think we've talked about reviewing it a number of times.
Yes, Commissioner, there is a report that's being finalized, led by Chief Yemenitz, Chief Hubbard, and Chief Summers. There's one section that will be updated, and then we are going to bring a report to the director, and then with some proposed recommendations how we might look at non-resident landowner fees and non-resident fees. So more to come on that very soon.
Thank you, Tom. It's important work, and there's a lot of detail to it. It's amazingly challenging to keep things simple, and I appreciate the Regulations Committee's attention to that and serious work to improve our regulations process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the credit goes to the committee and particularly Denise Bateman, who is, works as our administrative assistant, does great work keeping us straight, hitting the marks on timelines, and does an awesome job of communicating with citizens that might call in with a particular view on a whole host of regulations.
Those of you watching us on the web too, this is a living activity. This is something that each of us have a part in, and so we welcome those comments and guidance from the public.
Absolutely.
With that, I'd like to have about a 15-minute break. We'll reconvene at 10.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. Tom, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning again, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Just a brief introduction here. Recall that at one of our recent past commission meetings, Commissioner Don Bedell had expressed interest in learning more about the history of our forest management activities. And with that, it's my privilege to introduce Lisa Allen, our State Forestry Division Chief, and she'll provide an update on that exact subject. So with that, good morning, Lisa.
Good morning, Lisa. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners, Director Polly, Ms. Maples. I really appreciate the opportunity and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today about forest and woodland management on lands held in the Public Trust Management Department. So here's the plan. I want to first spend some time reminding you why we have an active forest management plan or active forest management on conservation areas and how that is necessary to achieve the department's mission. I also want to describe the four management categories that define the approach to forest management on a conservation area. That will be followed by a discussion of trends associated with the department's commercial timber sale program, including a look at average acres harvested annually, average acres or average volume harvested, and that resultant revenue that's flat. And then finally, we'll examine some recent trends in the timber value of Missouri's most common commercial species, and also take a look at our most valuable commercial species, the black walnut tree. And I just lost my PowerPoint. Bingo. What is this? Very good. All right, let's try that method. Okay, moving on. So just a little reminder, a little refresher on why we manage forests and woodlands on conservation areas. Of course, one of our principal objectives is to achieve the department's mission by creating and maintaining diverse wildlife habitat for many, many species. And you can see by the picture on the screen, there's a wide array of different types of species that use forest habitat that are very important to our state. Another reason why we manage is, as we know, healthy forests and woodlands produce clean and abundant water, resulting in healthy aquatic habitats, improved recreational waters, and even clean water for human consumption. We also manage because we know that healthy and well-managed forests and woodlands experience increased growth rates, and in turn, increased carbon sequestration, improving air quality for our state. Healthy and well-managed forests contribute to local economies, including the forest products industry and tourism. As a matter of fact, in 2014, the forest products industry contributed $9.7 billion to Missouri's economy. These industries support roughly 44,000 jobs in our state at a payroll of over $2.1 billion. And in some counties of our state, it is the number one industry in the state. So probably the most, or one of the most important reasons of why we manage the lands entrusted to the department is to be good stewards and to set an example. We manage approximately 602,000 acres of forest and woodlands, and we do serve as a role model for healthy and sustainable management and provide excellent demonstration sites for private forest landowners. As a matter of fact, in an effort to expand our role model status, as you know, we'll be leading the way very soon by undergoing a third-party audit of our management practices in hopes of certifying that we are practicing sustainable forest management under the globally recognized Sustainable Forestry Initiative. And as I mentioned in my introduction, forests and woodlands on conservation areas are designated into management categories that define the approach to forest management. The management category is determined by an interdivisional planning team during the area planning process. So let's take a look at those management categories. The bulk of our forest land is under what we call general forest management. As a matter of fact, this category is about 68% of the forested area. So visitors to these areas will find forests managed for public uses with evidence of timber harvest, thinning, and other types of vegetation manipulation. Most areas will have a variety of tree ages and structure and sizes, from regeneration to mature forest. And then they will also find the corresponding variety of wildlife associated with those different habitats. Another management category that a planning team might designate on Department of Forest and Woodlands is the category of natural areas. And about 8% of our forests and woodlands are in this category. These are lands primarily managed for natural plant and animal communities. Management techniques are used to emulate natural processes. Timber harvesting may be found possibly as necessary to maintain or reestablish a natural community, or to deal with something like some hazardous trees or hazardous fuels that are built up. And then the third management category, and it's interesting to note that we do have an active forestry research program, as you know, and roughly 2% of our forest land on conservation areas is set aside in that category of research, education, and demonstration. Timber harvesting may occasionally occur, and even at a large scale, in the case of our MOFET project, as you see the emblem on the screen, or it may never occur, depending on the research and the demonstration objectives of that area. And the final management category, which personally always kind of surprises me, that as much as 22%, or 132,000 acres of Department of Forest and Woodlands, are set aside in this category, but that is the urban and intense recreation areas. These are forest lands that are managed for high public use, and visibility and aesthetics concerns override maybe some of the wildlife habitat practices and forest products production that we might do in other areas. Timber harvesting would normally not occur, except for, again, in the case of a hazard tree situation or hazard fuel reduction or a salvage after a storm, or perhaps a demonstration to the public, since these are high-use areas. But whatever management that would happen would be on a small scale on these areas. But users would also expect to find improvements, such as trails, picnicking areas, and maybe even interpretive facilities. A good example would be like Rockwoods Reservation, St. Louis region. So now let's really focus in on those general forest management areas, which in fact encompasses about 400,000 acres of the Department's forest and woodlands. And that is the majority. So one of the things to realize on those areas is we have some very important management guiding principles that lead us for the general forest management areas. One of those is scientific management is based on forest inventory and silviculture. And by the way, silviculture is the practice and the art of forest management. So spice foresters like to think of themselves a little bit as artists in what they do. Also, forest health issues are addressed. Habitat goals are established by an interdivisional planning team. Natural community management goals are set and implemented and considered. And then, of course, one of our guiding principles is continued sensitivity to aesthetics and to the public use that occurs on the areas where management is going to. So as a snapshot, let's take a look at a summary of basically the last 7 fiscal years, 2010 to 2016. And this is an average of the annual accomplishments that occur in the forest management category. And this includes forest inventory, commercial harvest, forest stand improvement, old field, savanna, woodland management, and even tree planting. But the bottom line here is that on average in the last 7 years, we implement about 52,000 acres of forest and woodland management in total annually. And as I promised in my introduction, I now want to take a little closer look at the timber sale program. So we're going to see a few slides with charts and graphs. This slide depicts acres harvested each fiscal year for the past 7 years. So there's a few things to note here. You may be wondering, why was fiscal year 2010 a banner year? Well, I'll tell you, it wasn't because Forestry Division was on steroids. It was actually due to a very unfortunate event, which was the May 8th, 2009 derecho that really hammered much of the Ozarks for a 24-hour period with sustained winds of 60 miles per hour and gusts up to 100 miles per hour. As you can imagine, with that type of event, there was significant impact on much of the forest in the Ozarks, but particularly, we did have significant impact on conservation areas. But I am very proud to say that NDC staff mobilized very, very quickly. And really within about 18 months to roughly a 2-year time period, we were able to salvage all that blowdown. But as you see, May of 2009 impacted the next fiscal year, 2010. And so that is an anomaly that we harvested 38,000 acres that year, but that was almost all salvage operation as a result of the derecho. The second thing to note on this slide, that after the derecho, the acres annually harvested continued to decline to what we hope is going to be a low point in 2015. And yes, there is a reason for that, which I will try to attempt to explain in a few moments once we take a look at another trend. So this slide represents board foot volume harvested each fiscal year for the past 7 years. So as you might expect, after seeing a downward trend of acres being harvested, that would correlate with a downward trend of board foot volume being harvested. And you can see almost exactly that result on this slide. So, why the decline in harvest? Why the decline in acres and volume harvested in the last recent years? Well, the derecho set up an interesting situation for us in the fact that during the year it happened, the negative impact really towards our forest management program occurred over the next 3 years. This is because one of the things to remember that any time forest management is going to occur on the landscape, that begins with the inventory process. In other words, scientific management begins with data collection needed to inform the decisions that we make about forest management. So the year that the derecho happened, or the year before the derecho happened, we inventoried over 28,000 acres of forest. However, the next 2 years were largely spent on salvage operations. And so during this time, our inventory program fell behind because we were working on harvest operations. The other thing that you wouldn't think about happening is that some of the compartments that were scheduled for the next inventory cycle to start the forest management process were nearly flat by the derecho. Therefore, sort of taking them out of the management cycle for the time being. So those two effects combined resulted in that the next fiscal year, following the derecho, we inventoried about half as many acres. But as a matter of fact, for the next 2 fiscal years, we inventoried about 15,000 acres instead of 28,000. Kind of got us behind the 8 ball, but we had to deal with that salvage. The other thing is, and you'll have to pardon my pun, but the derecho kind of happened as what the old cliche might call the perfect storm. So in addition to the reduced inventory, unfortunately, while we're trying to get back on our feet after the derecho, we've had a significant number of vacancies in forester turnover. And when I get a new forester, it takes about 3 years to get them as productive as the last forester. And so with that turnover, we've slowed our progress. As a matter of fact, we've had anywhere for the last 3 or 4 years, 5 to 10 vacant foresters at any one time. So we keep plugging away, trying to refill those positions and get our foresters trained up. And then lastly, the third leg of the storm, so to speak, is that, and I know you're aware of this, that we spent about an 18-month period during this time frame working with our partners with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to develop workable bat management guidelines to make sure bats are protected, threatened and endangered bats are protected. But during this 18-month process, we had a number of timber sales on hold until the guidelines were indeed agreed upon. And we also had some restrictions placed on some of the harvesting we could do until we worked through the guidelines and came up with something that worked for both of us. So, maybe excuses, but we feel like that now that we're back on track with our bat guidelines, we've dealt with the derecho, we're back on our inventory schedule, we'll continue to see harvest levels that we had seen previously. But not 38,000 acres again, I hope not, anytime soon. We don't want another derecho. Interesting enough to note, though, is you would think less acres harvested, less volume harvested, less revenue. That's actually not been the case. And as you see on this chart, and in fact, the year following the derecho, 2011, even though harvests were down, we were up in revenue. To be exact, in 2010, we cut 28 million board feet and received revenue of $2.6 million. But in 2011, we cut only 18 million board feet with revenue over $3 million. So 10 million less feet. And in 2014, we only cut about 10 million board feet, but that brought almost $3 million in revenue. So the data is a clear example of what's been happening with the statewide trend of the value of forest products. It has significantly been increasing, at least until very recently. And we'll take a look at that. And it's important to note that while most standing timber has increased in value, some species are much more valuable than others and will significantly impact the revenue associated with the timber sale. So you may be wondering about the species composition of the department's timber sales. Well, it's kind of a dramatic difference here in that when we looked at the last 7 years of department timber sales, you will see on average 78% of the trees we harvest are in the red oak group. What would be red oak, black oak, and other red oak species. 14% are in the white oak group, 4% in the hickory group, 3% shortleaf pine, and then the last 1% is miscellaneous elm, ash, walnut, whatever falls in there. So what impact has our species mix have on timber sale revenue? Let's take a look at that. So this slide, this table is the current average saw log price per species per 1,000 board feet of standing timber. And one of the, you will note on this that the red oak group, which makes up the bulk of the department timber sales, is currently bringing roughly around $220 per 1,000 board feet. And I just heard from John Toll this morning that a couple of our sales have just opened this week, actually brought a little less than that. So we're seeing a little bit of a trend, which I'll show you here in a minute. White oak is significantly higher at $259 per 1,000 board feet. But wow, look at black walnut. It has been nearly $1,180, almost $1,200 per 1,000 board feet. But what does this trend look like? We took a look, because markets fluctuate quickly, we took a look at the last 3 fiscal years, 14, 15, and 16, to get an idea of that. So the blue and red lines represent timber price trends for red oak in the state. The blue line is for North Missouri, and the red line is for the southern part of the state for red oak. So due to differences in the type of products marketed from north to south, prices may vary in even the red oak group. Note that the red oak group in the south peaked in 2014. And that's probably why we're seeing a more downward trend again of department revenue, because we've had a lot of red oak. And in the north, it peaked in 2015. And based on the information I got this morning, it sounds like it's continuing to go down a little bit. The purple line represents the white oak group in the southern part of the state, and as you can see, prices are still climbing. And that's mostly due to the demand for barrel staves as that industry continues to grow in our state. While the white oak in the north, as represented by the green line, seems to have peaked in late 2015 and has basically declined since. Although I do not expect a change in the barrel industry as the wine industry continues and the distillery industry continues to grow nationally and abroad. And a lot of our barrels do go abroad, in Europe. So, but what about the black walnut? Let's talk a little bit about black walnut, since it is Missouri's most valuable tree from the standpoint of commercial value. So we record timber price trends on a quarterly basis with the assistance from Resource Science Division's forest economist, Tom Treatment, who works very closely with us. So the bars on this chart above represent each quarter, that's what the Q stands for the last 3 fiscal years, 14, 15, and 16. So as you can see, a walnut veneer log, this is veneer, was selling for almost $4,000 per 1,000 board feet in early 2014. But has generally been dropping off in value since that time, indicating that walnut veneer may have peaked under the current market conditions in 2014. But if we take a look at walnut saw logs, they seem to be staying steady. And after a brief drop in late 2015 and the first quarter of 2016. But nonetheless, the average price of walnut logs statewide has averaged roughly, as I said before, about $1,200 per 1,000 board feet for the past 3 years, making it a very hot commodity in the state. You may have noticed that I made no mention of walnut harvest as part of the MDC timber sales. Well, we do harvest a very, very small amount of walnut trees that do need to be harvested for whatever reason, poor form, poor growth, or they're mature. It's not a significant amount, a significant influence on our timber values for conservation areas because of the small amount of walnut we have. But considering the high timber value associated with black walnut, I thought you might be interested on looking a little closely at the prevalence of it on conservation areas. So we pulled out some data from the Forest Inventory and Analysis database. And indeed, we found that 6.5% of all black walnut trees in Missouri grow on MDC's land. And I will add as another side tidbit that Missouri has more walnut trees than any other state. They don't tend to be as good quality as the trees east of us in Appalachia and in the more glaciated parts of the country that are more glaciated, but we do have the most. We can have claim to fame for that. We also are the world leading producer of walnut nut meats. So, very important species to our state. 9% of the saw log volume, which is about 2.7 million board feet, is grown on MDC conservation areas. So, using that figure I talked about before of an average value of a walnut saw log being about $1,200 per 1,000 board feet, we estimate the walnut saw log volume on MDC lands is about $3.2 million. So when you consider, if you think about what does that mean? What does that look like? If you consider that the department owns roughly 602,000 acres of forest land, and if 2.7 million board feet of walnut saw logs was spread evenly over those acres, which it is not, but just for hypothetical purposes, let's assume it was spread evenly over those acres. That works out to about 4.5 board feet per acre. So we have our riparian areas, we have a higher density of walnut on conservation areas. North Missouri, where we have better loam soil for walnut trees, we have a higher density. But overall, in the big picture, it would amount to probably less than a tree per acre that we have a black walnut on conservation lands. And this is largely due to the fact that the majority of department forest lands, as you know, are in counties like Shannon and Reynolds and Wayne, and a lot of those Ozark counties, where the soil type there is just not conducive to walnut prevalence or walnut growth. So in fact, that is why we have so few walnut trees on conservation areas. And we do tend to favor them a lot of times and not cut them because they're so valuable for the walnuts and the nuts and protecting riparian corridors where they tend to grow. So those are some other reasons why we don't tend to harvest them as much. But even if we harvest them all, we're going to get $3 million. So, in summary, while a robust timber management program has been and will continue to be an important part of forest and woodland management on conservation areas, it's important to remember that commercial timber sales are just one tool in the toolbox used to manage healthy and sustainable forests for multiple benefits, including diverse wildlife habitat, production of clean water, increased carbon sequestration, support to the forest products industry, and finally to serve as a good role model for the citizens of Missouri. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much. Questions or comments, Commissioner Blair?
No, great presentation. Great presentation, Lisa, appreciate it. On sort of a different subject, with all this dry weather lately and the winds, what else do you have on your plate?
Fire.
So what are we doing, or what is that, how is it impacting your division and your responsibility?
Our staff has had pretty active last week, and over the last 2 weeks, we've had a number of wildfires. I don't have the numbers right in front of me. Ozark region has been hit hardest right now around Eminence, but it does redirect our staff for a short time while we're in fire season, and we are ready. We are equipped. We have our real fire departments working collaboratively with us, and we're ready to go when the big one comes. But yeah, we're ready for rain too.
Well, I just think it's important for people to appreciate how much resource the Department of Conservation directs towards fire management and supporting local communities, both in training and equipment and manpower. So thank you for what you do.
Well, you're welcome, and I thank the department and the commission for their support of programs like the Federal Excess Property Program, where we have been able to get out of over close to $100 million of rolling stock, rolling trucks to rural fire departments to help us out.
Commissioner Bradford?
Yeah, Lisa, you mentioned you had trouble getting foresters. Can you speak more on the reasons for that?
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. One is that, the universities just aren't turning out near as many foresters as they used to. MU's significantly lower. Colleges around the country are experiencing that same trend. Probably the University of Missouri is experiencing that trend more dramatically than some other places. We hire a lot of our foresters that have degrees from Southern Illinois University, Iowa State, some of the adjoining colleges. So that's part of it. And then one of our difficulties is when we do, and our vacancies have been created by retirements, promotions, and people leaving to go to work other places. That's all been a part of the mix. Recruitment sometimes is difficult because the average salary that we're able to offer at this time is significantly lower than equivalent positions in other states.
Any other questions, comments? Lisa, thanks. I know less than 5% of our state's forests are managed by foresters, but 100% of ours are. And I'm thrilled by that, and it's great to see the continued long-term research like MOFEP and other things that are internationally significant. You're doing great work. Thanks to your team.
You're welcome, and I have to give Research Science and many other divisions credit too for the work they do on the areas managed by Wildlife Division, and certainly for MOFEP and the research projects. Everybody collaborates on those. Thank you.
Jacob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Polly. I have the next agenda item. It is an action item for the commission. Yesterday, O&E Division Chief Johnny Straub and I presented an extensive evaluation of the bids received for the Shepherd Hills Nature Center project. There was very thorough and healthy discussion yesterday in executive session regarding that evaluation of bids. Based upon that discussion, this is a recommendation for authorization to reject all bids received for the construction of the Shepherd Hills Fish Hatchery Conservation Center replacement and storage building improvement projects. The Conservation Center replacement project was designed by Dake Wells Architecture, and the storage building improvement project was designed by MDC staff. The combined estimate for the two projects was $6,700,000. 4 bids were received for the work as shown in your advanced materials. The low bidder was Branco Enterprises Incorporated with a bid of $9,173,999. Design and Development Division and Outreach and Education Division recommend the bid as submitted by the low bidder be rejected.
All right, do I have a motion? And we'll get to the discussion in just a minute. Do I have a motion for consideration?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second? All right, now discussion, Director.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, the only other point I wanted to make is that we are very committed to some scope of a project at the hatchery. It's an important area for us, incredibly well-attended hatchery, folks coming from out of state and parts of Missouri, so it's a very important site for us. We are already in conversations of what perhaps a new proposed scope might look like, but I wanted you to hear from me that we are committed to some level of project down there expansion.
Any further discussion? I'd offer the observation that even our resources, as significant as they are limited, and we must jealously guard their use, and there's no sense in sending good money after bad. So thanks for this recommendation, and I'll call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion to not accept bids, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, Director Polly, and Ms. Maples. Before I start with the agenda item, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our new Chief Financial Officer, Andrew Bond. Andrew joined us on February 1st and will be responsible for the Financial Services Unit in the Administrative Services Division.
Welcome.
Welcome, Andrew.
It's my pleasure to present number 10 on the agenda. Included in your packets is the fiscal year 2017 mid-year review of revenue and expenditure trends report. The purpose of this report is to review the actual trends for the first half of the fiscal year and to explain any mid-year changes to the original estimates. We'll begin with conservation sales tax revenues. Conservation sales tax represented 61% of total revenues in fiscal year 16. At the end of December, which is the mid-year, conservation sales tax revenues were just 0.5% higher than last year. However, in January of 2017, there was an increase in sales tax revenues, which brought year-to-date sales tax revenues to 2.4% over fiscal year 16. The original growth estimate for fiscal year 17 conservation sales tax was 1.9% over fiscal year 16 revenues. Continuing with a conservative approach, we will maintain this estimate through the end of fiscal year 17. This is a bit more conservative than the consensus revenue estimate announced last month, which includes a 2.1% increase in sales tax for fiscal year 17. Permit revenues represented 18.3% of total revenues in fiscal year 16. At the end of December, permit revenues are 1.1% lower than the same period last year. However, they are 4.8% greater than originally anticipated. Although permit vendors are retaining a larger percentage to offset the cost of equipment and supplies with our new permit system, the number of permits sold to date is greater than the same period in fiscal year 16. The original estimated growth in permit revenues for fiscal year 17 was a negative 6.4%. Due to permit revenues coming in stronger than originally estimated, a change was made at mid-year to negative 3.6% growth. The next revenue category we'll review is federal reimbursements. Federal reimbursements represented 15.5% of total revenues in fiscal year 16. At mid-year, federal reimbursements are 3.1% higher than last year. Estimated growth for the first half of fiscal year 17 was originally at 3.9%. However, a mid-year review of all federal grants was completed by the federal aid section and indicated that reimbursements will be higher than originally anticipated. Therefore, the estimate is adjusted to 5.8% growth for fiscal year 17. Sales and rentals revenue represent 3.9% of total revenues in fiscal year 16. The sales and rentals category includes timber sales, tree seedling sales, agriculture crop, surplus property, land sales, publications, gift shops, concessions, and boat rentals. At the end of December, sales and rentals revenues are 0.5% lower than last year. The original estimate was 2.7% growth for fiscal year 17. At mid-year, sales and rentals were 13.8% lower than anticipated. Therefore, the estimated growth has been adjusted to a negative 1.3% growth for fiscal year 17. The last revenue category is all other revenue sources. All other revenue sources represented 1.3% of total revenues in fiscal year 16. All other revenue sources include interest, contractual services, donations, insurance reimbursements, settlements, and refunds. The original estimate for this category was 1.5% growth for fiscal year 17. At the end of the first half of fiscal year 17, interest is running 4.6% higher, and the other sources included in that category are 132% higher, which combine for an overall increase of 105.5% higher than the same period last year. Due to a sizable donation and increased state emergency management agency reimbursements this year, we are running well ahead of historical collections. Therefore, at mid-year, the original estimate has been increased to 33.6% growth. In summary, total revenues are 1.5% higher than last year at this time. The original estimate of 0.7% growth for fiscal year 17 has been adjusted at mid-year to a 1.7% growth. Before discussing expenditures, I'll pause here to take any questions you may have on the revenue projections and trends.
I just like to go back through the permit.
Yes.
So if I understand, mid-year change down 6.4% to 3.6.
Yes.
So it's a negative trend.
Yeah, it's a negative trend. It's less of a net, but it's less of a negative.
Last year, weren't we able to maintain that at flat last fiscal year?
I think we actually had an increase last year
Right.
over what we projected and over the prior year. But if you recall, and the new permit system is allowing the permit vendors to keep a larger percentage of sales. So we are cognizant of that fact. That's why even though we have higher permit sales this year, number of permits, we're seeing a decrease in the actual revenues.
I guess that's what I'm asking. We don't need to take up the time now, but maybe in another discussion, because I thought our permit sales were remaining flat, but this would indicate they're trending down. So I'd like to see that broken out.
Okay, it's trending downward due to the increase to the vendors. Once we get a year over year,
Revenue's trending, but
permit sales.
permits,
permit
if
sales are
people
not.
enjoying the resources
Exactly.
not, and that's,
Exactly.
that's kind of a hallmark of what Missouri Conservation's been able to accomplish and stand apart from a lot of other parts of the country. I want to make sure that we're getting the right takeaways from.
No, I understand. And the other side of the equation is that even though the permit vendors are keeping a larger amount to pay for the equipment and supplies that they're having to use with the new permit system, the expenditures for our point of sale vendor have decreased. So overall, we're still seeing a net increase in permit.
Thank you.
Mr. Britton? Thank you. Please continue.
So I'll continue on with personal service expenditures. The personal service category includes salaries, hourly labor, and employee benefits. At the end of December, personal service expenditures are 2.3% higher than last year, but 5.9% lower than anticipated at mid-year. The original estimate of 3.9% growth included a 5% premium increase for health insurance benefits for calendar year 2017. However, the actual health insurance increase was 0%. Due to this and other miscellaneous adjustments identified at mid-year, the estimated growth has changed to 3.2%. The total expense category includes all operating expenses other than personal service and equipment purchases, such as supplies, services, utilities, fuel, travel, cost share grants, etc. At December, expenditures are running 3.5% higher than the same period last year, but below the estimated 4.1% growth. The mid-year review identified a reduction in projected fuel costs as well as a few other miscellaneous items that resulted in a mid-year adjustment to total expense growth from 4.1% growth to 2.5% growth. Total equipment expenditures include vehicle replacements, heavy equipment, marine equipment, trailers, ATV, UTVs, technology equipment, and all other equipment. Original estimates for fiscal year 17 equipment spending were 43.7% lower than last year. At the end of December, equipment expenditures were 15.5% lower than last year at mid-year. The mid-year review identified the need to reallocate personal service and expense expenditure dollars to the purchase of equipment. The additional equipment spending allows recently identified high-priority replacement equipment to be purchased in a time frame that facilitates continued focus on timely conservation work and priorities. This reallocation results in a change in the estimate at mid-year to 28.9% lower than last year rather than 43.7% lower as originally estimated. The next category is total capitals. The capitals category includes construction and land acquisition. At the end of the first half of fiscal year 17, capital expenditures are 5.8% higher than the same period last year. Construction is 0.5% higher and land is 50% higher. A detailed mid-year review of total construction projects updated some projects' total cost and changed project cash flows to future years. Although the updated construction estimates for fiscal year 17 are less than originally estimated, projected construction expenditures are expected to remain in line with the original projections. There were no changes made in land acquisition projections at mid-year. Therefore, there is no change to the original 35.4% growth estimate for fiscal year 17 in the capitals line. In summary, total expenditures at mid-year or December are 2.1% higher than last year at this time, but below the original 4.5% budgeted increase. In total, although there were reallocations of expenditures between categories, there was no mid-year change to overall expenditure projections. As originally estimated, it is anticipated by the end of fiscal year 17, total expenditures will be 4.5% higher than last year. Mr. Chair and Commissioners, this concludes my remarks on the mid-year report, and I'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Any questions, Commissioner Blair? Comments?
Yes, you know, I guess my comment is, of the time that you've been wearing two hats and doing double duty, you've never been flustered, no question that has been asked of you. You haven't had complete grasp of the details and the background, and you know, I welcome the additional help to the team with the new financial officer, but I just really want to commend you for the job that you've done, and thank you. It's just been amazingly positive, you know, how well you've stepped in, so thank you.
Appreciate that. I would echo that, Cindy. I appreciate your careful monitoring of the expenditures and making these adjustments up and down. I mean, fine tuning it as much as looking at the reflection of gas prices. I think we do an excellent job with this agency of managing our budget very carefully, how much we appreciate the tax dollars that are dedicated to us. And it's because of you and our new employees who can do even more fine tuning and careful management of it. So welcome, and we appreciate the work that you do. It helps make our job a lot easier.
Well, like everyone here, there's always a team behind you helping, so.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much. Well done.
Thank you.
Jody, do you have someone to introduce to us?
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners, Dr. Polly, Ms. Rhonda. This morning I'm here to introduce Kyle Larimore. He's the department's hunter education and shooting range coordinator. He started his career with the department in 2005 as a private land conservationist, a position he held for 8 years until taking his current position in 2013. He resides in Owensville, living on the family farm, which they manage for fish, forest, and wildlife. In his free time, he enjoys hunting, fishing, supporting wildlife organizations, and sharing his outdoor experiences with others through programs and mentor hunts. This morning, Kyle will be providing an overview of the department's hunter education and shooting range program. Thank you.
Morning, Kyle. Welcome.
Great to follow the presentation with a bunch of numbers, so. Chairman, Commissioners, Director, Deputy Directors, I appreciate the opportunity to speak today on the two programs that I oversee with Hunter Ed and Shooting Range. These two programs play a key role in why Missouri continues to lead the nation in hunter recruitment, hunting safety, and shooting opportunities. I'm going to start with the Hunter Education Program. The mission of the Missouri Hunter Education Program is to develop safe, knowledgeable, responsible, and involved hunters. We continue to be one of the top states in student graduation rates, with currently 20 to 25,000 students annually, varies each year. Since inception, we've graduated over 1.2 million students, which is a very high number. The key to the Hunter Ed and why it started was to reduce hunting incidents. In the late 80s, we were sitting around 85 to 90 total hunting incidents annually, with 10 to 15 of them being fatalities. 2016, we reduced that number by over 70%. In 2016, we only had 10 hunting incidents and 0 fatalities. Of course,
Well, I just also mentioned that we got a lot more hunters now than we had back then too, and so it's even better than your numbers suggest.
Sure, you take those numbers, and I've looked at that on, you look at compared to other sports activities and recreational, there's a number of individuals in the field compared to what we have. 10's a great number. Obviously, we'd like to see 0. Read some of those incidents and you wonder, can we get there? But definitely the great job that the volunteers and staff are doing to get down, and that's the lowest number we've had since recording this. I'm going to give you a brief history of where we've been with hunter education before we get into some of the changes and where we're going. In 1956, our program started with 3 conservation agents developing a hunter education program. It was basically just take it upon themselves to voluntarily teach students who wanted to learn about hunting, hunter safety. They developed their own curriculum. In 1963, we adopted the NRA Hunter Safety Manual. The department seen the need to develop and adopt a standard format so that we can continue to teach hunters. And then AFWA, recognizing that states were in the process of developing hunter education, they felt the need to develop standards and guidelines for all states to follow, which is what we follow today for reciprocity with amongst the other states. And then we developed internally in the department an in-house manual, which we used up until 2003. It was based on these AFWA standards. And then in 1987, the department made hunter education mandatory for any one person a license. 2003, we adopted the curriculum that we currently use today, which is used by Capgemini Enterprises. Picture of the manual that we use. The traditional course at that time was 10 hours. It was an in-person classroom. Each student was required to attend the entire time and complete the class. In 2013, after a review of the program, the committee and the department felt the need to adjust a little bit flexibility and more convenience for the user. We developed a blended format, which is what we use today. Blended format consists of 2 parts, the knowledge and the skills session. The knowledge session you can complete 3 different ways: in-person classroom, which is a maximum of 4 hours, an online course, or you can take the manual home, self-study, read it at your own leisure, at your own time, and complete the student chapter review questions. No matter how you complete your knowledge portion, you have to come to the required skills session, which consists of hands-on demonstrations, breakout sessions where the individuals learn how to properly load, unload a firearm, cross fences, zones of fire, etc., followed with a final exam. That's the current process that everyone's required to do at this time. The new for 2017, building on the success of the program, we continue to find ways to improve and provide more opportunities to the public. So starting July 1st, 2017, we're making an all online hunter education course available to those 16 years of age or older and Missouri residents only. These individuals have the option to take the current online course we have now online, and then they must complete a 60-question final exam, which must score at 80% or higher. Currently, our blended course is 35 question, but the IHEA standards changed the delivery methods for online to a 60 question to ensure a little bit more, since they're taking away the hands-on component. They wanted to add some more questions, so we're still following the proper standards that IHEA on behalf of AFWA developed. The benefits of this new online course is it provides more flexibility and convenient options for adults. The options for last-minute permit buyers to get hunter education before deer season, turkey season. And our current numbers are showing that it's only going to affect 40% of our students. That 60% of our current students that we teach today are 15 years of age or younger. So but we still feel that 40%, a lot of those individuals will attend with their child, or they want that hands-on component. So it's still an unknown on how many will take the online option, but it is a convenient option for them for that reason. In the interest of Commissioner Murphy, we're moving forward with reformatting the bow hunter education program. This
Isn't
program,
that particularly dangerous?
Commissioner is an active hunter education instructor, so he has a big interest in the bow hunter education as well. But it was always the desire to take the bow hunter education program and mirror the hunter education. And we had to get through some kinks and figure out exactly how we're going to do things before we move forward. So now's the time we're moving forward with it. It will still be optional, not mandatory, but many students, we don't teach a lot of them during the year, not a lot of students because it's not mandatory, but it is important for those that are going out of state that need it, for Colorado or other states that have that requirement, that take it in Missouri, and then those other states will accept it, but also the urban hunts that have that requirement. But we're gonna mirror the same as Hunter Ed, so we'll have a blended format with the knowledge and the skills session, but also the adult online course. Still voluntary, but we're gonna incorporate the crossbow regulations as well as the urban hunting components. And I can't finish up Hunter Education without thanking all the volunteers and the staff that are out there that teach this program. Both programs wouldn't exist without the thousands of hours that they put in. We teach over 1,000 classes a year and certify 25,000 students. And it's a collaborative effort of 900 to 1,000 volunteers and staff and protection agents and volunteers from other divisions that do it on their own time that teach this course. So thanking them for that. I'm just the person that gets to stand before you, but the team behind is really what puts the effort for Hunter Education. We'll move on to the shooting range program. We currently have 5 staff shooting ranges across the state. This map it shows in green is the staff shooting ranges, 2 of them in St. Louis. One of them, August Day Bush, is currently being renovated and is soon to open, hopefully the fall of this year. Jay Hinges as well. Kansas City has 2 with Lake City and Palmer Woods, and then Springfield has the Andy Dalton range. Besides the staff ranges, we have 70 unstaffed shooting ranges, and they vary from rifle pistol ranges, shotgun ranges, and archery. And you look at the map, and we're well dispersed across the state, providing those opportunities for the public. And you look at the dispersion in the last study that was done, and we found that 51% of Missouri residents live within 30 minutes drive of one of our shooting ranges. And I don't think any other state could say that. Obviously there's pros and cons to having 75 shooting ranges across the state, as discussed earlier today, but the opportunity for shooting is definitely a high priority for us and for Missouri citizens.
Al, is there another state that has as many public shooting ranges as we have?
No, we still lead as far as state owned. Many states do cooperative ranges. Of course, they're just writing a check for another entity to take a range. For us, these are ranges we maintain, we run them, we operate them, we have full control over them. But many states are doing the cooperative range side. With the change in the federal aid and the interest in shooting, other states are in the where we were 25, 30 years ago, where we were really building these ranges. So many of them are catching up, if you say that, but we definitely are a model for other states. A lot of states call, they're interested in our program, how we do things so efficiently and provide the service that we do to the public. So to better understand how our shooting ranges are used, we partnered with the Missouri 4-H, which many of you know is a very well respected youth organization, community oriented. We partnered with them along with Resource Science to put a survey together so we could understand who's using our ranges, how they're using them, and many other questions we asked. This happened the entire year of 2015. Random survey set up by Resource Science, just to get a better feel of what's out there for our ranges. And we only did this on our firearm ranges. We excluded the archery. This was firearms only. Now the ranges that had archery ranges, the firearms ranges that have archery on them had some counts. But you'll see that roughly 300,000 users on those unstaffed ranges. Many of them came multiple times, so that unique number is 197,000 individuals used our unstaffed ranges. This also excludes our staff shooting ranges. Many of them came in parties of 2, and they spent an hour or 2 at the range at a time. And the interesting fact back to the distribution is the average distance was 24 miles per individual. Now, of course, many of them drove farther, but the average 24 miles is a pretty good number, in my opinion. We also asked, in the last 12 months, have you ever purchased a hunting license? To kind of get a feel of who, who's out there, because we don't keep track, we don't have a range permit, and we don't keep track of those users and how they support conservation. And 60% of our users have purchased a hunting license. But that 40% to us shows us there's an opportunity there, 40% an opportunity to gain and recruit new conservation supporters, and whether it be shooters or hunters or whatever it be. But that shows us there's an opportunity there, those individuals, to show them that we provide a service to them as well. It's not just always about the hunting and fishing, as the shooting as well. Some of the other questions: traditionally our shooting ranges were built to sighting a deer rifle, but we found that 50% of our users were handgun shooters. So we have a few of our ranges that we are piloting to provide a better opportunity for handgun users, because they also, as you can see, are a large part of that user base. And then the final question we asked the individuals is just an open-ended comment. What would you like to tell us? And many people didn't respond, but we found that 34% of individuals said something to the fact that they liked our ranges, they loved our ranges, and they wanted more of the ranges. And of course you get, the longer ranges and other things, but it was nice to see that the majority of the people understood the benefits of our shooting range program and what we provide compared to other states. And then they also know that there are bad apples that use shooting ranges, and so they wanted us to be aware that they self-police and do their due diligence as Missouri shooters to make sure that the shooting ranges are still cleaned up and operated the way they should. How we're going to use the survey information is range priorities to figure out the user numbers on the shooting ranges, how they're being used, to develop a list to do a better job of when it comes to construction and renovation on which ranges really need the work, and so we can be more efficient in that process moving forward. Range locations and potential needs in areas across the state. And if we've seen any range rule changes that may be made, because one of the questions we asked was, do you see violations at the range? And we asked them what they were, and that can be a little tricky sometimes. People don't want to tell themselves or tell someone else, but we still were interested to see, because they are unstaffed, what's happening out there. But at the end of the day, we really just want to improve customer service, the safety, and the availability to those that are using our ranges. Of course, these ranges are operated, and they could be operated without multiple divisions. O&E takes the lead on the program itself, but wildlife, forestry, and design and development definitely play a key role in operating and making sure our ranges look and as well as they do. So I just wanted to make sure that was a point, that it's not just O&E, but it's multiple divisions that play that role. We have a shooting range manual that all of our ranges follow, and that manual consists of the best management practices on outdoor shooting ranges when it comes to design and environmental. We're currently in the process of writing standard operating procedures and environmental stewardship plans for each individual range, so they'll be site-specific when it comes to, the range manual covers the high-level information, but each range is unique in itself, and so how they operate and the environment that they're in dictates both the standard operating procedures and the environmental stewardship plan. So that way we're protecting on that end. Now we're exploring a cooperative range grant agreement. We're looking at if we're going to increase new opportunities and how we're going to do that. Is we're looking at partnerships, as I mentioned, other states are doing with other public entities. We find some interest in whether it be municipalities or organizations or even schools that want to build a shooting range for their community or their students or their organizations, and we're looking at options to develop some type of program or grant similar to the CAP agreements to find ways to provide more shooting opportunities, but also reduce the burden, the maintenance and everything that goes along with the shooting range that we find now. Looking at future shooting range management, we're always working, we're working with IT to utilize technology to find ways to improve our shooting range management process and becoming more efficient. Two of the projects we're working on now is a shooting range inspection system, as well as a shooting range check-in and reservation system. The inspection system, currently what we do, we inspect our shooting ranges twice a year. Staff go out and they take the inspection form out based off the criteria that's on the form. They evaluate the range, and when they're done, it goes into a pile or a filing cabinet, and it's hard to pull any information out to really get down to what does that shooting range need. And it's back to doing a better job of prioritizing the range and those needs, so we can give them the renovation and destruction they need. So what we've done, we've taken that form and put it in an electronic format. So now the staff take their iPads out to the range. The form's on the iPad. They walk through the entire form with touch screens. They evaluate everything, add their comments. Once they sync that information to their computer, it goes directly into the database, which can be pulled out real time, anytime that we need it, based on any fields in that system, to allow us to do a better job of managing our shooting ranges. If I want to know which ranges request a construction project and what they want, I can pull it out without having to call all the range managers or the area managers or OSSs. Or if I want to know how many of them did meet this expectation for a certain item, I can find that information. It's much easier. The old way with paper documents, it was needed, but if you don't do anything with it, what was the intention? So we're doing a better way, finding a better way to do that. The next project is similar to the waterfowl check-in. It's in our staff shooting ranges. We're going to have kiosks at the range. The user will come up, they're able to scan their driver's license, their heritage card, or their permit card, or enter manually their information. It speeds up that process of checking in, because sometimes the line becomes long, and busy times of the year, there's 3-hour waits to shoot, so they're heavily used. So we use the kiosk system so that staff can spend more time running the range safely rather than collecting that information, which many times individually may not be accurate information. They're just giving you a name just so they can get into the system. Whereas this will allow us to pull that information. They can select what they want to do that day and then work them through the range. So at the end of the day, the shooting range, we are looking at ways to improve safety, efficiency, and then the customer service for the user. These two programs provide all Missourians an opportunity to learn about hunting, firearm safety, with the help of volunteers and staff from all divisions. Both these programs will continue to grow and will continue to explore new options to improve efficiency and customer service to the public. So with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Thank you, Kyle. Commissioner?
Yeah, Kyle, just 2 questions really. On hunter safety, with this implementation of the online course, I assume you're going to do data monitoring on the results like you do on the incidences, and if they go up or down, and so we will know the impact that has.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, and that's always been the question. What is the best delivery method to teach hunter safety? And there's, it's still an argument today. I mean, not everyone agrees with the direction that we may be going. But to answer that question on hunting incidents, it's, even when we changed to blended, that was what a lot of individuals said. But it's hard to determine when, why that blended format, why the hunting incidents increased. Why did that happen? Wasn't that blended? We're still finding many of those individuals took the old traditional. What we've done to answer that question is in the new hunting incident database we're developing that's outside of this, is we're asking that question. Because right now, the hunting incident report just asks, were they hunter certified or were they not? So what we've added to it is traditional, blended, and all online. So when the investigators go out, the hunting incident, they will ask not only were they hunter education certified, but what format, so that we can track that information. And that's a separate system we're kind of working on, because we know that's important. But we wouldn't be able to answer it unless we asked them.
Well, and you don't want to rush to judgment to just say everything needs to go online and then lose the safety that we've built up over the years.
But we never discount safety for convenience. And that's what I've always said, is, number one is safety, but we're also providing convenience to the user. You don't discount that. And so, yeah, those are always things we address.
Very glad to hear it. Thank you. The other question was on the recruiting of additional supporters at the ranges. You mentioned that's an opportunity. Do you have plans for that? Anything you can talk about briefly?
Yeah, we've formed an R3 committee, Hunter Recruitment Retention Reactivation Committee, and those are things they're going to look at. That committee is made up of every division that has a hand in this process, and it's basically every division we have. Because it is a priority, and those are things that committee is going to look at from what's our target markets, how can we do a better job of reaching out to those that don't know we exist. So there'll be more to come, because we're going to develop a state plan that is based off a national plan that was recently developed last year. So you'll see more on how we do that, but those are things that we want to use the tools and resources we have today to do a better job of reaching out to those markets.
Well, it's a great opportunity, and to this point, we know at least there's that 40% that could be tapped. So I appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing more about it. Thank you, Carl.
Great presentation, Kyle, thank you. You mentioned the we a lot, and I just kind of want to go back and emphasize the we. The we is the volunteers, and how many hours, and can you be a little bit more specific, or do you have anything top of mind about the number of volunteers or hours, that you get to support your effort?
Yeah, we're the volunteers. The ranges between 950 to 1,000 volunteers. They're doing about 25,000 hours a year, and that's just the classroom work. That's not counting the mentor hunts they participate in, or if they help staff with another type of program. We're collecting that from a hunter education classroom portion. So that's the rough estimate of the number of hours that our volunteers are contributing. Of course, I'm confident to say it's more because we're not collecting those other events, but we will. We're working on that.
I just wish there was a way to maybe put in dollar terms, because when you think about our budget and the salaries we pay, I mean, how many hundreds of FTEs, full-time employees, does that equate to, because of the great job that we do in working with those volunteers and getting their support. And I think there's a story that needs to be told there, and appreciate your work in organizing that. I also wanted to, kind of comment on the hunter safety aspect. I think there's some real potential benefits, because as great as our team is, it's almost impossible to get exact consistency from classroom to classroom, to training session. But with more of the refinement on the online, I think you're going to see the potential to have increased consistency in messaging. And my hope is, and my experience is, it's all about front of mind awareness. I mean, we've all learned stuff, but your habits. What are your habits when you go in the field? Nobody intends to go out and have an accident. How can we come up with ways just to keep it front of mind before they, load their firearm, or before they climb in the tree, or how do we get them reminded? I think is the challenge for you on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, that is a challenge, because when we teach students, we only have them now in the skills session, you have 4 hours. So unfortunately, when they leave that 4 hours, they go back to whatever social structure they have, so whatever group they're hunting with, and that's who they're learning from. And so unfortunately, it's sometimes not always the best way. So that is a challenge to how to overcome that.
Do we have some sort of program, or might I suggest, I know every time I go to an organized shoot, whether it's a charity shoot at a sporting clays event, or a group hunt where there's a social aspect and there's 20 hunters going out or something, somebody usually takes the lead and does the safety talk. You know, is there some way we could incorporate that into smaller groups of hunters? Somebody always taking the, you know, say the Lord's Prayer before we go out, and then, you know, take 2 seconds and talk about safety, and who's the designated driver, you know, with our kids? Who's the designated safety coach in every small hunting party? Can we come up with ideas like that?
Yeah, we can look into that. I know from a volunteer standpoint, they always make sure they at least mention the number one rule. And because that's what they're passionate about, is the safety part. So we always start our programs with that, but we can look into how to expand that to programs that we don't control and then make it a habit for individuals to try to learn. Back to the consistency part, our program is set up for that consistency. No matter how they learn, whether it's a book, a classroom, or they're online, it's the exact same material. And that's why we benefit from one vendor, is because we can maintain that consistency so that when we have issues, we can track it right back to some type of learning component. And we found the online with new individuals, there's many of them like that because it's a better learning experience for them because there's graphics, there's videos, and they enjoy it more, and I think they retain it. So whether they retain it long run over hands-on is an argument, but the way our program is set up now, that consistency and it is there. And we'll continue to maintain that.
Excellent, Kyle. Thank you for your leadership in this. This is something that everyone has an opinion about, and to see it move forward in a sensible, strategic way, and to continue to reach out to more people, include more people. It's marvelous work. Thank you. Lisa?
Hello again, Commissioners. I have the next three agenda items, and they are action items. The first one is action item number 12, which is a recommendation requesting approval to purchase approximately 280 acres in Shannon County as an addition to the Suncoast Conservation Area.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just comment, I mean, I think we've had an extensive review of the land adjacent to it, the appraisals. You know, I think we have a pretty detailed grasp of this. This is a valuable add-on, and I like the fact that it's a strategic add-on. So for anybody watching, I want to know that we've thoroughly vetted this.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I'd just like to echo the Lab Foundation's contribution to it. So, good partners make a good land acquisition.
Thank you. Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of the motion as offered signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next action item is action item 13, and that's a recommendation to request approval for the purchase of approximately 671 acres in Dallas County in the Cooling and the Dietrich family that would be in the conservation area in Dallas County.
I have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right. Discussion. It's one that has significant stream frontage. It's really a key acquisition. Yes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion as offered signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Then the last realty action that I have, action item number 14, is actually a disposal. And it's a recommendation to request approval to sell approximately 4.5 acres of the Neosho Tower site in Newton County.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Looks to me like what we're selling in this apartment has less resource value than some of the rest. It's disjunct. It's across the highway from where the main body is.
On the north side of Business Highway, when it was built, it was cut off, and then the old tower site was there, and then after a tornado, the resource was devastated with the tower.
So management should be a little more straightforward. Okay. Those in favor of the motion as offered signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. Welcome, Jason.
Morning, Commissioners. I have the next two action items. The first one is a recommendation to seek approval to accept from the estate of John Jerome O'Keefe the donation of approximately 80 acres in Buchanan County as a new conservation area, and to name that new conservation area Eugene O'Keefe Conservation.
Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Any discussion?
Do you see opportunity to expand beyond that 80 acres right there?
At this point, we haven't explored that opportunity, but it is close to the St. Joe metropolitan area, relatively speaking. So there certainly is interest from the public of having that close proximity.
I realize it's a donation, but I also, during my tenure, I've seen donations that we've accepted that a number of years later were a headache. I mean, are you absolutely convinced that this is a piece that's not gonna be a problem down the road and just another small parcel to take care of?
Yeah, actually, given its relatively close geographic proximity to St. Joe's, our work team's there, it's a nice clean boundary, it's a nice little property. It's one that we don't foresee having to spend a tremendous amount of staff time maintaining.
Any further questions? Hearing no further discussion, those in favor of the motion made, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
Next recommendation is to seek approval to exchange approximately 13 acres of the Flight Lake Conservation Area in Bergen County for approximately 13 acres in Bergen County, property owned by Stoltz Lake Hunting and Fishing Club as an addition to the Flight Lake Conservation.
Do I have a motion for this action?
So moved.
And a second. Any discussion? Pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Let's have a motion, a vote then. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Thank you, Jason. Let's see. We're ready to move back to the consent calendar. And the first item for consideration, number 2 tab on the consent calendar. This is David Thorne. Thanks for coming to the podium. Tell us about the action that you have before us.
This is a request for approval to officially name the new education building located at the August A. Bush Memorial Conservation Area Shooting Range and Outdoor Education Center, and to name the building the Richter Family Education Building in memory of Edna A. Richter, Paul Richter Jr., and Robert Richter. Mrs. Richter was a resident of St. Charles County, and when she passed away in 2007, designated the trust assets to come to the department, and they were approximately $2.2 million at that time.
Do we have a motion for this action?
So moved.
We have a second? No second? Okay. As chair, I'll take action and second the motion. And now let's have a discussion.
I would like to have a full slate of commissioners to vote on this, and I'd like to have more discussion on this. I thought that's why we took it off the consent agenda.
Discussion on the naming?
Yes.
All right.
I'm
Okay.
not opposed to it, but I don't think there's been enough discussion to have a vote today on it.
Well, we have a motion on the floor. Do I have a willing withdrawal or call for tabling?
I would be willing to withdraw the motion until Commissioner Bedell could also weigh in.
All right. So then we're tabled until next session or until Commissioner Bedell's available.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, David.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to item 8. Try for this. Construction budget mid-year review summary. Jacob.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director Polly. There are, item C8 has two components. One is the regular status report, and the other is the mid-year report. Would you like me to speak to both, or just the mid-year?
Just a minute here, please.
In your advanced materials, there is a summary of activities at mid-year for the projects listed in the different categories in your regular status report. There's also in the advanced materials an updated cash flow projection report for all the projects that were in the approved fiscal year 17 expenditure plan. The mid-year review reveals the construction expenditures for fiscal year 2017 are below target to meet the original projected expenditure that Cindy had mentioned previously in her presentation. However, several large projects will commence in the second half of the fiscal year, and expenditures are expected to approach the original projection. 7 vacancies on the design team have been filled in the last year, and production of construction documents is beginning to increase. In addition, the construction expenditures for January are nearly half of the construction expenditures for the first 6 months of the year that this report is based upon. If we continue with that trend with good weather and the projects that are under contract and under construction, I expect that we will meet that projected expenditure that was in the original fiscal year 17 expenditure plan.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Berry?
Jacob, I just understand that you can't accomplish these targets without the staff. And, I appreciate you calling it to our attention about the vacancies. It's real important that we manage our money carefully and closely, and without the people to do it, it's difficult to deliver. So, I appreciate this report.
Any other questions or comments about tab 8? Seeing none, let's proceed to 10. Objectives.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Just real quick to answer Commissioner Blair's question on volunteers. Did a little research real quick. We have over 6,000 volunteers that help individuals discover nature through various programs and outdoor skill classes. Over 250,000 hours of service a year. You equate that to FTEs, that's over 100 FTEs right there. So there's a weekly output conservation on the ground without our volunteers. As far as the legislative update for the commission, we are 7 weeks into the session, only 12 weeks to go, but who's counting? So, this week we did complete our Senate appropriations hearing. That hearing went very well. Next Thursday, and we will have an opportunity to present to the House Budget Committee, which it will be all hands on deck from the director down to the division chiefs to help with that presentation. As far as a few of the bills that we're tracking, House Bill 181, which is what we're calling the littering fix, which was sponsored by Representative Don Phillips. That bill has had a hearing. It's now moved on into the next step, which is the Rules Committee. After that, it will then move to the floor for potential debate. House Bill 2050.
Aaron, can I interrupt?
Yes, sir.
How many littering tickets do our
Over a 5-year period, our agents will write a little over 2,000 littering tickets. They likely write more littering tickets than any other law enforcement agency in the state. So this fix should really be a no-brainer for us to get back in. In fact, there were very few questions asked to Larry or myself during the hearing. Another bill very important to the commission, House Bill 250, which would be the increased penalties for the poaching of big game here in the state. I had the pleasure of having Gary Cravens from the Ozark region to come up and testify on that bill. Gary, when he found out he was going to have to come up to the Capitol and testify, he said, "What are you trying to do? Get me to retire or what?" But he did a wonderful job, gave the local perspective, the problem that we have with non-residents coming in, not purchasing a permit, especially during turkey season. The enforcement efforts that we've had along the state border with Arkansas with some of our highway stops was very good testimony. We also had a hearing this week on Senate Bill 241, which was introduced by Senator Schatz. Senator Schatz did an incredible job introducing this bill. Larry and I really had absolutely no questions, and there was a ton of support there from individuals and conservation groups.
I gotta ask, Aaron, how do we compare to other states with our poaching fines? I know that it's a different system.
Our fines are a Class A misdemeanor, which in state statute is a maximum fine of $2,000 and/or a year in jail. But all of our wildlife violations go through the fine collection center, which that fine is set by the courts, and it's set so low that an individual won't challenge it in the court. So a lot of our fines are probably around the $200, $250 range. But in the fine collection center, we are on the upper end as far as the fine structure. If you look at surrounding states, Iowa, you may face a fine of up to $20,000. Same in Kansas and other states. You go out west, there's a good chance you're going to lose your truck, your gun, your boat, whatever else you might have. So we're way behind as far as the poaching fines go. Another bill we're watching is Senate Bill 123, which is the captive servant bill. That's the identical language that we saw in 2014. That bill has been placed on the Senate calendar and could potentially be debated as early as next week. Senate Bill 164, which deals with animal trespass. Both the Commission and the Regulations Committee has heard from hunters, landowners, as well as cattlemen that have concerns with free-running dogs, primarily coyote dogs. This legislation would help fix that issue, and we will be testifying on that bill on Monday. Another bill is Senate Bill 370, which would provide non-resident landowners that own at least 80 acres permits at half price. That will have a hearing on Tuesday. We will be testifying on that bill related to the bill's fiscal impact to the department, as well as our permit prices compared to surrounding states. Also, we are watching Senate Joint Resolution 16, which would amend the Constitution to sunset this conservation sales tax. That has been assigned to the Senate Agricultural Committee and could have a hearing within the next couple of weeks. Those are just
Can I interrupt, go back? What's the impact of those permits?
on the non-residents. It would well be over a $250,000 negative fiscal impact to the agency based on the number of non-resident permits that we sold prior to 2009. Prior to 2009, we did offer a non-resident landowner discount. A lot of times we hear from non-residents that they deserve a reduced price permit because they pay taxes here in the state. We did a little math with the department to recover the lost revenue from one non-resident deer permit at half price. That individual would have to spend $90,000 in taxable items here in the state. So they'd have to spend a lot of time in Missouri and buy a lot of food and beverages for us to make up that lost revenue. We're also tracking several other bills that deal with the department's land acquisition, bills that would eliminate the commission's authority to acquire land, would also remove our property tax exemption, and then modify the forest cropland program as well. As you all know, the department has a very strong partnerships with counties, and since 1976, we've been making a payment in lieu of tax to county governments, which in many cases is higher than what the average landowner pays. On any given year, you combine our PILT payments, our levy district payments, as well as our forest cropland payments, that equates to about $1.2 million. And then you throw in another $800,000 through the CART program, we're providing over $2 million annually to our county governments, our county partners. So that will be our talking points if we ever have an opportunity to testify on those bills. But with that, commissioners, that's the end of my report, unless you have any other questions.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Other matters of concern to be addressed before we adjourn? Anything else on your table too? Director? Then this meeting's adjourned. See you in April.